Elite performers possess something invisible that most people actively avoid. This single meta skill determines whether you plateau or break through to exceptional results. How strategic patience unlocks elite performance. Here's something that's going to challenge everything you think you know about high performance. There's a skill that no productivity hack, no morning routine, no discipline framework can replace. And the crazy part, most people spend their entire careers running away from it. Think about the most successful innovators in history. They didn't just outwork everyone. They didn't just have better strategies. They possessed a psychological capacity that allowed them to operate in spaces where others couldn't breathe. They could sit with uncertainty, with discomfort, with the unknown, and extract value from it. This isn't about resilience. That's just enduring pain. This isn't about persistence. That's just repeating the same actions. We're talking about strategic patience, the deliberate cultivation of comfort within ambiguity and friction. It's the ability to stay present in situations that make everyone else desperate to escape. Ancient military strategists understood this perfectly. The greatest victories weren't won through aggression alone. They were won by commanders who could sustain psychological pressure longer than their opponents, who could sit in the discomfort of not acting while everyone screamed for immediate action. That mental discipline was the weapon nobody could see. Now bring this into modern context. Why do some entrepreneurs build empires while others with better ideas fail? Why do certain athletes dominate while more talented competitors fade? The difference lives in their relationship with discomfort. Elite performers have rewired their nervous systems to recognize friction not as a threat, but as fertilizer for exceptional growth. Your brain is designed to seek comfort and avoid uncertainty. It's hardwired for survival, not excellence. Every time you face something ambiguous, something uncomfortable, your biology screams at you to find the exit. Most people listen. They optimize their lives to eliminate friction. And in doing so, they eliminate their competitive advantage. Because here's the truth that changes everything. The zones that feel most uncomfortable are precisely where breakthrough insights live, where innovation happens, where you develop capabilities that separate you from 95% of people in your field. But you have to be willing to stay there long enough to harvest what's available. Why embracing friction creates breakthrough innovation. Let me show you something that will completely shift your perspective on achievement. Every major advancement in human history emerged from sustained engagement with discomfort. Not from people who had all the answers, but from those who could tolerate not having answers long enough to discover something revolutionary. Consider the mindset of master negotiators. They don't rush to fill silence. They weaponize it. While the other party squirms in discomfort, desperate to resolve the tension, elite negotiators remain perfectly calm in that ambiguous space. They've trained themselves to be comfortable exactly where others panic. That psychological edge translates into better deals, better outcomes, better results. The same principle applies to technological innovation. Breakthrough solutions don't come from obvious thinking. They emerge when someone can sustain engagement with a complex problem longer than anyone else. When they can sit in the frustration of not knowing, not solving, not fixing, and let their minds work at deeper levels. Neuroscience backs this up in fascinating ways. When you repeatedly expose yourself to controlled discomfort and ambiguity, your brain literally restructures itself. New neural pathways form. Your cognitive threshold for complexity expands. Your decision-making under uncertainty becomes sharper. You're not just building tolerance, you're upgrading your operating system. This is why the most sophisticated hackers excel. They don't get frustrated when systems seem impenetrable. They actually become more engaged. That friction activates something in them. They dive deeper into complexity while others give up. Their competitive advantage isn't technical knowledge alone. It's their psychological capacity to remain curious and engaged in deeply uncomfortable territory. Think about championship athletes. Their training isn't just physical. They systematically seek discomfort that others avoid. They push into zones that hurt, that feel impossible, that generate doubt. And they stay there. That willingness to inhabit psychological friction is what separates world class from amateur. Here's what most people miss. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Every time you optimize for ease, You're optimizing against development. The moments that feel hardest are the moments generating the most value, but only if you can resist the urge to escape them prematurely. What if discomfort is your unfair competitive advantage? Now, we're going to get tactical, because understanding this concept means nothing if you don't know how to weaponize it. And here's the secret. Not all discomfort generates equal returns. You need to learn to decode which types of friction produce exponential growth versus which just drain you. There's destructive suffering and there's constructive challenge. The difference is intentionality. When you deliberately choose to engage difficult situations because you recognize their developmental value, that's strategic patience in action. When you just endure circumstances without purpose, that's just pain. Look at how monks developed extraordinary mental capabilities. They didn't sit in meditation for years because they enjoyed it. They used that profound discomfort, the restlessness, the boredom, the mental resistance, as training equipment. Every moment of discomfort they chose to observe rather than escape was building neural architecture for focus and awareness that seems superhuman to untrained minds. Chess grandmasters do the exact same thing. They study uncomfortable positions where there's no clear answer. They spend hours analyzing ambiguity. This isn't masochism, it's systematic training of their ability to make superior decisions under pressure and uncertainty. They're building a mental toolkit most people will never possess. So how do you actually implement this? First, identify the specific areas in your life where you feel the most avoidable discomfort. That difficult conversation you keep postponing. That complex skill that requires months of frustrating practice before showing results. These aren't obstacles, they're your training grounds. Second, create personal protocols. Maybe it's exposing yourself daily to small doses of strategic discomfort. Maybe it's dedicating time to work on something with zero expectation of quick results. The key is consistency and intention. You're reconditioning your nervous system to recognize discomfort as a signal for growth, not danger. Third, measure progress differently, not by external outcomes, but by your increased capacity to remain present in challenging situations. How long can you sit with a problem without seeking distraction? How much ambiguity can you sustain before forcing a premature solution? Drop threshold in the comments and tell me which area of your life you've been avoiding that has the highest growth potential. If this is landing for you, hit that like button and subscribe because there's more coming. How does this meta skill amplify everything else? Here's where everything crystallizes into something you can actually use to transform your performance. Because strategic patience doesn't exist in isolation, it acts as a multiplier for every other capability you possess. Think of it this way. You already have technical skills, knowledge, experience. But when you layer this meta skill underneath everything, it's like upgrading from a standard engine to a turbocharged system. The infrastructure stays the same, but the performance jumps to an entirely different level. Leaders who build lasting legacies operate exactly from this principle. They're not in a rush. They can hold long-term vision even when everyone around them is panicking for immediate results. That ability to navigate pressure, to remain steady in the ambiguity of process, enables strategic decisions that others simply can't access from their anxious state. Consider how elite investigators solve complex cases. They don't force conclusions prematurely. They can sit with contradictory evidence, with missing pieces, with uncertainty about what happened. That psychological comfort with not knowing allows patterns to emerge that rushed thinking would miss entirely. The meta skill enables superior analytical capacity. Now apply this to your reality. Your high-performance projects, your ambitious goals. Everything shifts when you stop avoiding the difficult path. When you stop searching for shortcuts and accept that the route necessarily passes through uncomfortable terrain. Not because you want to suffer, but because you recognize that's where real competitive differentiation lives. The integration happens in layers. First you apply it to small daily decisions, then to larger projects. Eventually, it becomes your default operating mode. And when you reach that point, people around you start noticing something different. A calmness under pressure, a clarity amid chaos, an ability to see opportunities where others see only problems. Successful CEOs, championship coaches, master craftsmen. They all share this trait. They've developed such profound comfort with discomfort that what paralyzes others energizes them. They've turned friction into fuel, and that transformation isn't mystical or magical. It's trainable. It's a skill you can systematically develop. The question isn't whether you're capable of this. The question is whether you're willing to deliberately seek the exact situations most people spend their lives avoiding. What separates performers who peak from those who dominate? We've arrived at the fundamental truth that changes everything about how you approach achievement. Every system you've built, every goal you've set, every strategy you've implemented can be exponentially amplified when this meta skill becomes your foundation. The difference between performers who peak and those who dominate isn't talent. It isn't resources. It isn't even opportunity. It's their psychological relationship with the uncomfortable, the uncertain, the ambiguous. It's their capacity to remain fully present in situations that would send others into reactive panic mode. Watch how master teachers operate. They don't rush to fill every silence. They let students sit in the discomfort of not knowing. They understand that breakthrough learning happens in that space of productive struggle, but only if the learner can tolerate staying there long enough for genuine insight to emerge. This applies to technological advancement as well. The engineers and developers pushing boundaries aren't just smarter. They have higher tolerance for working in systems they don't fully understand yet. They can function effectively while surrounded by ambiguity. That psychological capacity is what allows them to solve problems others abandon as too complex. Your next level of performance isn't about acquiring more knowledge. It's about developing greater capacity to operate in the friction zone where real growth lives. It's about reconditioning yourself to seek, rather than avoid, the situations that feel hardest, because that's where your unfair advantage gets built. The integration is simple, but not easy. Start choosing one uncomfortable action daily, one conversation you'd rather avoid, one problem you'd prefer to delegate, one skill practice that feels frustratingly slow. Not randomly, but strategically, focusing on friction that directly serves your highest performance goals. As you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. Your baseline shifts. What used to feel unbearable becomes manageable. What used to trigger avoidance becomes interesting. You're not just building skills, you're fundamentally upgrading how your nervous system responds to challenge. Type unstoppable in the comments and share which growth opportunity you're going to lean into instead of avoiding. If this shifted how you think about performance, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because elite performance isn't for everyone, it's for those who consciously choose the harder path. This content is for educational and motivational purposes. The concepts presented are based on historical, scientific, and philosophical analysis. Individual results may vary. Seek appropriate professional guidance for your specific needs.